started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
He's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin. Would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Well, off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. We are not live. We are recording, but welcome to the Hockey Podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we currently sit at 100, and World Junior Superstar Sidney Crosby of the subscribers. And of course, you can subscribe to wherever you get your audio here. The Canadian World Junior Camp roster has been released, and we are going to focus on who from the WHL is going to make the team, who from the WHL has been missed, and examine all of that and just kind of get an overview of where we're at from the WHL's perspective of the World Juniors, joined by third line, the two of the four of the third line pause back, Adam Gerzenblatt, Chris Roy. How are you both doing?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, all good over here.
Good. You guys were very talkable before this, and then all of a sudden you guys are like not.
I was trying to give Adam a second to jump in there. I didn't want to start talking over him, but yeah.
See, it's a better debate. Liam Neeson versus Keanu Reeves is basically it's a better debate than should Braden Holt have been on the Team USA World Junior roster or not.
You're trying to poke Liz already.
Yes, and that only took 2 minutes, and she's not even on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was very adamant about that in our last recording. So hopefully she doesn't watch this because she's going to come at you hard, Adam.
Well, yeah, I guess let's start with do we want to dig into the US, or do we just want to focus on Canada, or
whatever you want.
Okay, well, maybe we'll touch is there anyone on the US other, and maybe for those that don't know who Braden Holt is, maybe let's expand on that. Why he should be on the team and why he was not left off the team. Charlotte.
Well, I know that I haven't paid as much attention to Holt as Liz. Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. Is he not the goalie for Everett?
Yeah, he is the goaltender for Everett. He played he was selected to the U18 team last season. Didn't play for them, Team USA, but this year, 12 games, a .920 save percentage, 9-0-2 with 2 shutouts and a 1.86 goals against average. He's a prospect for this year's NHL draft, so he could still come back and play. I think it might be an age thing with why they didn't select him, but honestly, who knows? He's really the big name missed from Team USA.
Well, and I know looking at the USA roster here, so they've got Drew Commesso, which is going to be their starter. And maybe that was their mindset was, we've got our guy. But, you always want that backup guy. And right now they've got, Caden Mabareko. Don't really know a lot about him. And the one that's jumping out for me, Dylan Silverstein is... his numbers in the USHL were not great. The development program numbers have been a little better, but I don't understand why you wouldn't let him sit. I believe he's eligible for a couple more seasons. So, bring in Holt to sit behind Commesso. Now you've got a big question mark if Commesso goes down for any reason.
Yeah, I don't know either, but looking at the numbers, it does seem like Braden Holt I wonder how much this is about team chemistry with this too, and sometimes with World Juniors and even the Olympics, when we debate about the Olympic team, we sometimes think it should be an all-star team when it's really about a team. But maybe, maybe there's something we are not seeing with Braden Holt. But it's tough for me to knowing the Everett Silvertips goaltending factory that you would not at least give him at least a look. But even the way the U.S. team handled Dustin Wolf over the years, that's been kind of fascinating as well, because they really didn't give Wolf that huge opportunity that a lot of people deserved either.
Yeah, it's true. They clearly have got their sights set on who they want, and they've got reasons that a lot of people don't understand. Just like, obviously Canada left some guys off the docket there that raised a bunch of questions too. So,
yeah, the only other question mark for Team USA forward Cross Hannes, he was drafted in the second round, plays for Portland. He's close to a point per game player, but that might be the exact same situation. He didn't participate in the the USHL for many years, or the national team development. So it might be that the coaches just don't know him, and that could be a reason why they're not giving him an opportunity.
There's only 3 junior teams on their camp roster, and they're all from the OHL. You've got Tanner Dickinson, you've got Declan McConnell from the Kitchener Rangers, and Sasha Pashajov, who was drafted by Anaheim. Declan drafted by Tampa Bay, and Tanner Dickinson drafted by St. Louis. So, maybe it doesn't, I don't know what their view is entirely on the WHL, but there's a lot of college guys there. So maybe they have a higher ranking and belief in that college program than they do the junior program.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty obvious that the college program seems to be working for the Americans. Like, there's been some super high level guys coming out of there, so they're doing something right. But it does seem a little odd that they really have ignored the entire CHL for the most part. So, like Adam was saying, it must just be who the scouts have had a chance to take a look at. Maybe it was due to lack of international travel over these last couple of years, or I'm not sur
Yeah, that's a good point too. If you're not able to see a lot of that hockey, then it's hard to scout. And we've had this. There was some that had that debate with Connor Bedard last year in the WHL. Is like, he only played in one division. How good is he truly? Maybe that was something that crossed the mind of the scouts in the U.S. I don't know.
Yeah.
But to focus on Canada. So we've got, I'm going to start with one name that I'm just genuinely curious about, because it seems he has the size, he seems to have the credentials, but he hasn't been on that radar yet. And I'm curious am I missing something? Why do I not see the name Luke Prokop?
Yeah, honestly, that is a name that never really crossed my mind as to an omission. I've seen a few articles over the last few days about some of the guys, the Brant Clarks and et cetera, et cetera. That's a really good point, actually, why he wouldn't be there. I don't have an answer for that one.
Am I missing something? Is he not, like, the guy he's 6'4", 218 pounds. I mean, he seems to have the size. He's been put in the Oil Kings as a leader. Like, I'm not sure what I'm missing here. He was in a Nashville camp. I mean, he's not a high draft pick. Yeah. But it seems to me like this is a guy that should get at least a look at the World Juniors. I'm missing. Especially when you have 2 right-handed shot players on the roster.
Yeah. Yeah, they're. I hate to think this, and I don't think it is what it is. But, I'm wondering if they just don't want the media attention, because it would just bring in another facet with everything he's gone through. And maybe it would be a source of attention that they just don't really want to deal with. And I hope that's not the case. But, you got to wonder what the thought process is. But at the same time, they also left Brant Clark off. And they said it was, defensive liabilities. Like, his offensive numbers are clearly there. And everyone was saying, hey, he's got to be there. But like you were saying before, you also can't have 6 or 7 top 2 defensemen. You're also going to need some shutdown guys and some, two-way guys and things like that. So I would hate to think that, but it does cross your mind.
Yeah. Adam, did you have any thoughts on?
Honestly, when it comes to why players were left off and why players were selected with this Team Canada group, I'm a little bit confused with the defensive core. I understand the forward group a lot more, but you know what? There are people who are paid a lot of money to make these decisions, so there's obviously a reason. I can't really answer it. He's done okay, but yeah, he's got 15 points in 23 games. So it's one of those situations where they just decided against it. It's kind of annoying that there's obviously this player that deserves to
be there.
And you don't even have to he doesn't even have to make the team. You could just,
invite him to camp.
What we talked about with this is like, you just bring them in. Like, there's no harm to bringing them into the selection camp.
Yeah.
I know that you have a limit, but if you have players like that aren't going to make the team, why not bring in, like, if you bring in, I don't know, an 18-year-old and you know that they might not make the team, why bring in that 18-year-old when you can bring in a guy who it's his last opportunity and might be able to pull off a roster spot?
Yeah, I don't like. I don't know, that situation is just fascinating to me, because I mean the whole week we might as well just touch on this. Brant Clark, high draft pick for the LA Kings, highly recognized prospect during the U18s, was not selected on the camp. That, I think, surprised some people. I'm going to be honest, I actually wasn't as surprised as other people, and I'm not saying I have some sort of inside information, but when I was watching the U18s last year, I seem to remember that they took Brant Clark from that top 4 position, and they were moving him down for other, like, they put Olin Zellinger in some roles that they had Brant Clark in. So I wasn't as extremely surprised that he was left off the team. Like, I'm not saying like I know something that everyone doesn't, but I don't know if I was as shocked as everyone else.
Well, I remember reading the scouting report on him too before his draft. He got drafted last year, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading the scouting report, and they said that his offensive instincts and everything are clearly there. His game wasn't 100% rounded, and they were basically insinuating that he should be able to figure it out and build a better 200-foot game. And he's was discussed as one of the top prospects in last year's draft. And then he just slid and slid and slid. Obviously, 8th is still pretty solid, but there were some people that were talking about him as a potential first overall at some points last year. So, obviously other teams noticed the same thing, that, maybe his game wasn't completely rounded out yet. And then after this year, back in, is it Barrie?
Yep.
5 goals, 18 assists for 23 points in 18 games. The offensive game's clearly there. I don't watch enough OHL to know whether or not he's rounded out his game, but my assumption is, based off his omission from the team, those problems are probably still there.
Yeah, I haven't watched enough either, but and we're only bringing this up because I guess if we're doing this podcast, we have to bring up Brant Clark, but it's
yeah,
because that it was one of the bigger stories. But to look at what the WHL, we have Caden Gooley, who's now with the Edmonton Oil Kings as he was traded this week. We have Damon Hunt from the Moose Jaw Warriors, Vincent Iorio from the Brandon Wheat Kings, Carson Lambos from the number 1 ranked Winnipeg Ice, Ronan Seeley from the Everett Silvertips, and Olin Zellweger from the Everett Silvertips. I guess in terms of defensemen, Adam, from anywhere from the BC division, are you seeing any misses?
As far as defensemen, I don't really think so. There are some pretty good defensemen in the BC division that could have made this team, but in the end, I feel like this was kind of, the problem with the BC division is that the defensemen are kind of younger. So they're in that next wave. So you got like guys like Mats Lindgren, who will be considered maybe next year, but definitely the year after. You guys in Vancouver, we have a guy in Mazden Leslie who has been talked about that he's going to be part of Team Canada, in a couple of years for this World Junior team. So, yeah, I'm not really surprised that there's omission of defensemen from the BC division, but that's also because the top defensemen are from that 2005 Bantam draft class.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, not to sound too much like a homer, but I don't know if he's quite on the level of the national, the World Junior team, but I do know that in Victoria, Gannon Larocque, third round or fourth round pick for the San Jose Sharks, has hit a new level this year, and he is at 16 points in 20 games, 3 goals, 13 assists. A lot of them have been late in games. He seems to have that gear where when it's clutch time, he shows up, and he's a big body. He lays out hits. He's defensively responsible. And in the last, what is this here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In his last 6 games, he's at 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 points in his last 6 games for a defenseman on the worst team probably in the WHL. They've been on a tear as of late, but I don't know, watching him, he seems to be worthy of a potential look in camp, but he is an 18-year-old, and this is primarily a 19-year-old tournament. So
yeah, so that's the one name to look out for definitely next year.
Yeah. As far as locks, I'm going to assume Caden Gooley will be a lock. I imagine it's going to be him and Owen Power that will be the number 1 defenseman. I'm thinking Zellweger has a pretty good chance. And Carson Lambos,
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would say that Damon Hunt is going to make the team. Yeah. But, Ronan Seeley, he has a chance, but I think that I'm not 100% sure on him just because he does play in Everett, and that in that overall situation is very good. So I think
it's a defensive system.
Yeah, that defensive system is good. I don't know if he will get invited, but that's definitely another name that is on that list. But outside of that, the problem is we haven't seen some of these OHL players play much in the last couple of years, so we don't know what these OHL players are gonna do.
Yeah,
at the selection camp, they lost their entire season last year, a lot of them. So how do we judge going into the World Junior selection camp on players that we haven't seen play for a year?
I really think that I've liked what I've seen from Vincent Iorio as well. And I think once you start looking at some of these names, though, you're cherry picking the ones you think that are going to be the top 6. And it could be, Owen Power and 5 WHLers realistically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, Adam, but I look at Carson Lambos was a pretty high pick. I think he's got a shot. Owen Zellweger, I'm thinking because he played last year at the U18s, I think they're going to have a look at Damon Hunt as well. So that's sort of why I'm feeling that there's going to be some more locks in the WHL, but there's only 2 OHL defensemen on this roster, Ryan O'Rourke and Jack Thompson. I'm guessing that Thompson would have an advantage because him and Iorio are the only 2 right shot defensemen on this roster, which is bizarre to me. I will have to agree.
Yeah. I would have. I don't think you can go into this tournament without a single right shot defenseman. So I would say from his size and from what I've seen of his game, I would say Iorio should be quote unquote a lock. I don't really know a lot about Jack Thompson, but yeah, it's going to be WHL heavy on the back end though, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, one thing to also remember is that 2 of the coaches are from the WHL. You got Dennis Williams from Everett, and then Michael Dick from Vancouver. The management team is from the OHL though, so the fact that they didn't really bring in a lot of OHL players is a little bit odd. But once again, it could just go back to the fact that a lot of
They
OHL
miss-
players didn't play last year.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I would say to summarize though, I think the D-core is the weakness of this team though.
I would agree. It's really funny kind of, just sort of you tangenting this a little bit with the potential of the Olympic team. And I'm saying potential because I honestly don't know if we're going to China, but if the NHL is going to China, but you look at that Canada blue line for the Olympics, I kind of am feeling that's the weakness of that team as well. I mean, goaltending, I think that Canada will be okay. I think that there are some options, but defense that's where I feel that Canada is going to be weaker than a few other teams.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. We'll save the goaltending for later because I think there's a juicy debate on who starts there. But with forwards, I guess let's start with the misses. I don't see a Colton Dock on there. I don't know if I don't think that that's a miss. There's some really talented. This forward group is really talented. You could probably have 2 forward groups in Canada and feel pretty confident about what you have out there. But anyone in particular? Yeah.
There's no real names jumping off the page for me as misses, but like you were saying, this forward group is almost deep enough to make 2 teams. So it's going to be heads and tails better than the forwards of the American group, in my opinion. And I'm just interested to watch the Canada-USA games because it's going to be offense versus defense, and it's just going to be a battle, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this forward group. I don't have any complaints, and I don't have any names that come to mind as major misses.
On my side, there's only 2. Well, there's 2 names that you can really look at that missed from the WHL from the forward group. Connor Mclennan from the Winnipeg Ice, 38 points in 25 games. It's not like this is his only, fantastic season. He was over a point a game player last year as well. So that's one name to look that might be questionable why he didn't get asked to attend. But the big one is Josh Pillar from the Kamloops Blazers. 4th round pick of the Minnesota Wild. He plays right wing and he can play center. Last year, 29 points in 22 games. This year, 28 points in 21 games. That's one that you look at and you question why he didn't get selected. This is a tournament where you want those players that can play center as well as the wing position, and he fits exactly what they need. He can play on the power play if needed. He can take faceoffs if needed. He plays for Kamloops, which is a organization that really knows how to do that run and gun hockey that Canada kind of likes to play. I know that a lot of people have looked at him, but those are also 2 players that haven't been called up to Canada yet in the past. They didn't play at the U18s last year, so that might also have an effect on why they weren't selected in this year's tournament.
And then Chris mentioned Matthew Savoy as well.
Yeah, Matthew Savoy is, but I understand Matthew Savoy because he's not drafted. I know that we have Bedard and Shane Wright on this team. Savoy, it doesn't really make 100% sense, but at the same time,
he's also
it
a
makes
smaller.
Sense, but it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense at the same time. Yeah,
Do you really want to bring
too many
undersized
players?
And undersized, underaged? I mean, it's a primarily 19-year-old tournament, and you've already got Bedard there, and then you're going to bring Savoy, who's 17 and 5'9", 179. So they're not playing 3rd or 4th line roles, those guys. So now you have to try and cram them into your top 6. And are you forcing a square peg into a round hole at that point when you've got such a deep forward group?
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of understand the Savoy one. I do see your point about Pillar, because he, watching Kamloops, he's been really good. But I also look at like some of the names on here. I'm like, I'm having a tough time taking somebody off of this list to put him on. That's my struggle. Like, who am I taking off for this? Like, it just that's the problem. So I do like him, and I think that he's going to be a steal for. He's going to be a steal there. That was a steal of a pick, but it's a tough roster. So I guess we'll start with Connor. Does he make this team?
It's an uphill battle for him, I think. But just because of the clutch nature, I mean, I could picture him being one of those guys that, like an Eberle in this tournament, where when you need a goal, he kind of just comes out of nowhere. It's going to depend on the camp and if anyone underwhelms, I think. I think he's got a huge uphill climb, but all it's going to take is a couple guys in front of him to stumble a bit, and he could sneak in, I'd say. It's my prediction.
Adam?
On my end, I don't think I think that they just brought him in for the experience. I don't think that there's real chance that he makes this team. Yeah, but there's obviously a chance that he makes the team, but I think that they bring him in just for the experience and for just to make sure.
So next year, yeah. So next year he knows what to expect, and then he can sort of hit the ground running and not be overwhelmed by the entire process, because next year is going to be his showcase.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want. Yeah, they Team Canada. The only play Team Canada, you really need to be one of those standout players to make the World Junior team 2 years before you're drafted. You got the guys like I believe Connor McDavid did it.
Yeah.
Or Sidney Crosby did it. But Connor Bedard he had a great season last year, but this year he's been struggling. So we have to put that into perspective. It's also, if he goes to the World Juniors, Canada loses him for the U18s, which they don't want to do. So he's not going to go to both tournaments. I think that Canada is stacked enough in this tournament that they would rather save him for the U18s.
I'd agree with that.
They'll give him a chance next year. There's no harm to bringing him to camp and then saying, listen, we're going to bring you to camp so that you can experience what it's like to play for the against World Junior competition. We'll give you a chance. It's a good learning experience for him, but in the end, it's more about development. This call up is more about development than actually production at the World Juniors, because if you bring him this year and he develops a little bit better, then you're going to have a better player next year. Where in comparison, if you leave him behind and you don't invite him, he doesn't have that opportunity to learn how to play the game more complete, which is one area that he does need to work on.
Yeah, this is a measuring stick for him, I'd say. Go into some practices against, 30 of the best players in the country and see where you're lacking so that you know what to aim for in your off-season training. You can get the glitz and glamour of the World Junior, the whole process under your belt, so that next year you've got that more complete game and you're not in awe of the whole process and you're more comfortable. Because in theory, if he can round out his 200-foot game next year, it's going to be the Bedard show, and that's what they want. And I agree with Adam too. They need him for the under 18s. So give him a few practices, come to camp, get your measuring stick, figure out what you need to work on, go dominate at the under 18s. And, we'll see you next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that as well. He's got so much ahead of him that not making this team is not going to be the end of the world. There's still electricity for him, for sure.
Yeah. The only damage it does to him is, a lot of people have had that comparison where they say that this kid is, the next Crosby, the next McDavid or whatever. So if he doesn't make the team in the same years that Crosby and McDavid did, it puts a little hurt in his draft stock, but all he has to do is focus on what the coach has been trying to get him to do and round out his game better. And he can get back to that conversation. But it will put a damper on the momentum, I think, if he doesn't make it. But It's just a speed bump.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I mean, the Crosbys and the McDavids of the world are just one special, and I don't think. I think Bedard. I think part of the challenge that Bedard has had COVID has been a sort of a wreck and a kind of a wreck for his career, because all he got to do last time was play against his own division, which wasn't. I mean, it's competition, but I mean, legitimately, you could argue it wasn't the best competition. That's what some people felt. And now this year with this team with Regina, they've already went through a coaching change. The team around him isn't at that championship level yet. They're certainly building to next year. So I think he's just had a lot go against him that I think, not being there doesn't necessarily tell me that he's not going to be a superstar. I think we just have to put a lot of things in context with Connor Bedard, because he just hasn't had the same path that Crosby and McDavid had because of COVID and because of a number of things around him.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Which leads to go ahead.
Oh, like just agreeing. There's not much more you can say about this.
Situation.
Yeah.
Which leads to Shane Wright. Does he make the team?
That's the question. I'll let Adam chime in before me. I'm doing a little research at the moment here.
Shane Wright's a little bit of a different situation because he did play for it, or he was on the team last year. So the fact that he was part of that team, that U20 team last year, he didn't play, but he was part of it, does lead me to believe that he could be on this team again. He's a year older than Connor Bedard, so it's a little bit of a different situation. He's a natural centerman. He's going to go first overall. Like, there's no question about it on this side. But yeah, he's one of those players that I think will definitely make this team. Like we've said, we know it's a 19-year-old tournament, but Shane Wright is playing in the NHL next year, so this is his last opportunity to play in this tournament. Unless something goes horribly wrong in training camp or something, he will. He is going to be in the NHL next year, so I think that bringing him in is a positive. And we talk about where he's going to fit in on this team. This could be your second line center in the end. He knows the coaches, he knows the system already. He's coming in with big advantages. Even though he didn't play last year, he's off to a fantastic start this season, and he's going to be a huge factor, especially on the power play for Team Canada this year.
Well, and then you look at his numbers last year too. So he didn't have a season, but obviously they had the under 18s still. And in 5 games at the under 18s, he had 14 points, 9 goals, 5 assists in 5 games. So when you're in that, format where it's best on best, I mean, yes, it's the under 18s, but you're still taking the best under 18s and putting them against each other. And after a season where he had no gameplay, just practices or whatever they were doing over there, and he still comes in and within 5 games puts up 14 points. So, and you look at it this year, he's the captain of his OHL club at 17 years old and 27 points in 21 games. I mean, he's playing against guys 2 or 3 years older than him. And I'm sure, he's got a decent size to him, but once you get to that age, you start to, what did Rick Nash call it? You get your man strength, where you just kind of, you build into your frame a little bit. And these young guys are always up against it when they're playing against older guys. And he's clearly hasn't missed a beat. So I agree. I would say there's no way he doesn't make this team.
Well, I'm just looking at the automatics here. This is why I asked, because Dylan Guenther, I think, is an automatic. I think Kent Johnson's a lock. Mason McTavish is a lock. Cole Perfetti is a lock. Justin Sordiff, Adam, I think, is a lock.
Yep, Justin Sordiff will be a lock. He was one of the. He was almost a lock last year. He was one of the last cut. He'll be a lock this year.
So I've count 1, 2. Jake Neighbors. Do we have? I think he's.
Yeah,
Oh, he
Jake
should
Neighbors
be.
will be. Well, he
The-
played in the NHL, so that's usually a good indication that he's going to be a lock.
Yeah.
So we got at least 6 locks on that forward group. That's why I'm like, this is.
Did you say Perfetti? I'm pretty sure Perfetti will be a
Yeah,
lock.
Perfetti. I did include Perfetti in that. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think he's a lock as well.
Yeah.
That's why I asked, because it's like normally I would be like, yeah, no kidding. But you look at the top 6 of this forward group. I mean, I Shane Wright to me right now, if I would project as the third line center, maybe depending on how you're putting your lines out. I mean, I think Kent Johnson.
I think that could work great for him though. Like he's got the size that he can be on those bottom 6, and you play him in a good matchup role on that third line, and he could take advantage and provide, a level of offense from that third line that you wouldn't be used to getting, I would say.
Yeah, actually, and if you're giving him the Bergeron comparison, there's a good place to start. Put him in a third line role and see when he fits.
So sorry, let's just go over let's just go over the names one more time because I'm trying to visualize, the lineup.
A depth chart, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
my locks. Gunther's a lock.
Yeah, that's your right winger.
Kent Johnson's a lock.
That's
Left
probably
winger.
your second line center.
Center.
Mason McTavish is a lock.
Okay, that's probably your first line winger.
Jake Neighbors is a lock.
That's a first line winger.
Cole Perfetti is a lock.
Perfetti is a winger, correct?
He does both center and wing.
Yeah, so I think McTavish does center and wing as well, so you can kind of switch those two around.
Yeah.
And then Justin Sordiff is the other lock.
Yeah.
And he's
Okay,
what?
so
Center,
yeah,
center
that's
and
kind
right.
of that's a pretty good top 6. And then you can fill it out with guys who are kind of bigger for your bottom 6 if you really want to.
Yeah.
Guys like Jack Finley or Zach Dean or Will Cooley. Like these are guys who are kind of bigger, play that heavier game that can really fill out well in the bottom 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one name I did leave out from a WHL perspective is Logan Stankovic.
Yeah. The tough part about him is I think skill wise, he should be a lock. The problem is with his size, you're not putting him probably on a fourth line. So you need to make room for him in your top 9. And, with the depth, like you said, you could take a bigger body that is skilled and put him down on that third line with Shane Wright. Maybe that's one of those second line wingers that you were talking about. Maybe even a guy like Sordiff. You can move Sordiff down to be a winger with Shane Wright and make room in the top 9 for Stankoven. That's what I would probably envision. I mean, personally, yeah, my opinion, you get a third line of Sordiff, Shane Wright, and someone like Hendrix Lapierre or something. I think you're going to have a third line that's hard to play against and is going to put up a surprising amount of points. That's, you need depth scoring in those tournaments for sure.
Well, there's also guys like the debate is, does Logan Stankovic make it? He has an extra year of eligibility, but that's a guy who can really bring offense from a lower. If he's playing lower in the lineup, he's not that big shutdown guy, but he can still.
That's literally who we were just talking about.
That's literally who we were talking about.
Sorry, my brain just kind of like my whole desk setup. All of the cords just decided to pop out of the walls, so my brain just kind of
sidetracked. Yeah,
like I don't know what.
But what about speaking of him, what about Logan Stankovic? I think he could.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about Logan Stankovic? Does he make the?
I just pulled a what is it, like a Moj there?
Yeah. No, I think there's a spot for him. I think there's a spot for him. It's just going to be a matter of how you make that work. But there's nothing wrong with having some playmakers and some scorers on that third line. But if you look at the typical makeup of a hockey team, you're wanting those third and fourth lines to be the hard to play against. Shut down lines, good hard on the forecheck. So you're going to want, a little bit of size and stuff down there. And typically you're loading up those top 2 lines with, the skill and the speed. So you got to find a way to cram Logan in there. And I think he would reward you. He's got that IQ. He just always seems to be in the right spot at the right time. And he'll be one of those guys that gets you a game winner late in the game.
Yeah, he has that Jordan Eberle quality to him. Like he finds a way.
You know who he could turn out to be if he makes the team? Like Tyler Steenberger.
Yeah. Yeah, he had some
doesn't
success.
Play a lot, earns his spot, and then he scores the game-winning goal in the gold medal.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Jordan Eberle, and I just would have howled.
No, and then he can cause players to throw their medals into the stands because they're not good enough at silver.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Elias Anderson.
Yeah.
Well, the one concern I would have, I mean, it's not a concern, but when you see a 6'6", 223-pound body in Jack Finlay, I wonder if you're tempted and you see it between a 5'8", 170. That's one concern I would have for Stankovic. I wonder if they like the size of Jack Finlay over Logan. But to me, I mean,
yeah. Well, like I said though, I think you're going to fill out that fourth line with guys like Finlay. Yeah. So I don't think they're competing for the same roster spot, like the same lineup spot. So I think it would come down to more like, do we keep a guy like Bedard or do we keep a guy like Stankovic? Because, they're going to have to cram into those top 6 areas. And, if it's one of those two, I'm taking Stankovic because he's got, the experience, it's probably his last kick at the can here for the World Juniors. And whereas Bedard has got a couple years to go, and it's the same role. It's going to be a sneaky, fast, second line winger kind of role. And I would say that that's the competition for a guy like Stankovic, is the smaller, speedy guy that needs to cram into a top 6.
Yeah. Yeah. Just on a side note, just on a tangent, I don't think one thing, and we try to not talk about the Canucks here, but one thing that has not been talked about enough is the fact that you took Danila Klimovich, who I admire. I think he's going to be a fine player. But passing on a Logan Stankovic over a Danila Klimovich, to me, is just...
Yep. Oh, I was screaming at the TV during draft day. I'm like, take Stankovic. Like, we were talking in the group chat, and it was like, they have to do it. They have to do it.
Yeah, if you want to know somebody who was very disappointed, go message Sean Warren. He
Blazer
from Kamloops.
Yeah.
And he apparently he yelled very loudly.
Yeah.
Oh, I did too. I was like, "Are you what? No, what? Yeah. No." Yeah.
From what I've seen, obviously Danila started the year off really strong in Abbotsford, and
he's a healthy scratch.
He's regressed a bit, but same situation probably as I hate to make that this. I'm not comparing the two, but same situation as like a Bedard, where the coach is trying to say, okay, it's all well and good that you can stick handle in a phone booth and you've got a great shot. But to play in the NHL, you need a 200-foot game. You cannot be one-dimensional. So he's trying to force him to go, okay, there's other parts of your game you need to work on. And he's tripping and stumbling a little bit with that part of the game. If he can figure that out, his NHL or his shot and his stick handling abilities are NHL ready. It's just he's not going to succeed at that level until he can bring in more.
Yeah.
And that's where he's stumbling.
Yeah. I agree. It's not like he's going to be a horrible player. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, it's
a prime example of, you say that, Jim Benning's greatest strength is that apparently he's a drafter. That's what his skill set is supposed to be. Well, you look at some of the last few drafts and you're like, okay, well, you can't do that right. So what can you do?
Yeah. I'm with you there. And then, with this roster, back to the roster part about this. I mean, we didn't even talk about, we talked about Maverick Bourque, but Xavier Bergeau didn't make, is not on our team. And that's like, that just shows how talented this team is going to be. I mean, we didn't talk about Ridley Gregg. We didn't give him it. Yeah. So that's, it's an
insane forward group. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a very normal thing where, we can sit here for hours and debate like every year. Oh, why isn't this player on this team? Why isn't this player? Why did this player get a call up before this player? Like this. We look back every year. It's always a debate. For a couple of years there, the WHL wasn't very well represented, and there was always talk about like, why isn't the WHL players going? There's so much talent in the WHL. Why is Team Canada missing out? And now that we have 15 WHL players, we're like, well, why isn't there 35 out of 35 WHL players?
Well, yeah, and not only that though, it's just like Kevin was saying, it's so deep that how do you even get into discussing some of the players? Like we didn't even talk about Dylan Gunther, but it's going to be a fun team to watch. I don't think they're going to have a problem scoring goals. It's going to be a matter of keeping goals out of their net.
Yeah. Which leads to goaltending. They chose 3. This is the 3 that they're going to run with. It's going to be Sebastian Cossa from the Oil Kings, Dylan Garand from the Kamloops Blazers, and Brett Brochu of the London Knights. But who is draft eligible? So I'm assuming that they're going to split between Cossa and Garand, and whoever is better in the middle round is going to take the run. That's, I think, the plan.
Yeah, I think it's Garand over Cossa in the end. I think that he has the experience, and I think Garand is going in as the starter right now. I know that Cossa is 10 feet tall and gigantic, basically, but I do think that Garand has a little bit more mobility. He's been like we said, he's been there before, and I think he has the edge to start with at least. We'll see what happens in the tournament, but unless Garand just falls on his face, this is his gold medal to win.
Yeah, we had this conversation in our most recent episode, and I am on board with either, to be honest. And Garand being Victoria, BC native, I'm happy to see him. I'm more than happy to see him take the pipes. I don't know. Cossa's got the pedigree being a first round. What is it? Was he the
15th?
15th overall, and he was the highest drafted goalie since was it Fleury?
Want to say, yeah.
With the exception of the other goalie that went a couple spots ahead of him. No. Detroit took him as the first goalie.
Yes, because that was between him and Jesper Wallstedt, and everyone was saying Wallstedt would be the guy, and Detroit took Cossa.
Yeah.
So
I just think that it's the game is changing a little bit, and you're seeing a lot more of these taller goalies that are, they're still mobile and they're still able to play the position well. It's 100% a crapshoot. You could flip a coin with these two, and I don't think you're going to be in a bad way. I just think that it's going to come down to the first one to falter is the backup. So if you let in 1 or 2 bad-looking goals, that might be enough to seal your fate for this tournament, like early on in the exhibition portion.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it's a very Team Canada thing to do. Make it between the 2 goalies and let them battle it out. And I agree. I don't think you can go wrong. I think Garand has been so good. To me, I think he's got a little bit of Devin Levi from last year in him. He's got some fight in him. But the problem, the other side of that though, is Cossa. That's the hometown. You wonder if that gives him somewhat of an advantage, just in terms of understanding the area. But that's
one of the things we didn't get into on the pod. Actually, that was one of my arguments that I had in the chamber, but I didn't fire it off. Was the home ice and the fan base and all that it's gonna play a role, I think. But same thing. They could give him the pipes at first because it's, his arena and whatever. And all it's going to take is him to let in 1 or 2 shady looking ones. And it's going to be like, okay, Dylan, you're in. And Dylan could run with it the entire tournament.
Yeah, but I have a question for you guys about that. Now, we all know that the Edmonton Oilers No, they didn't pass on him. No, they passed on Wallstead, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
yeah.
they took Xavier. No, they didn't really. They
Oh no, they
took,
couldn't get either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never mind. I was gonna say, like, do we think that that Edmonton Oilers fans are going to be a little bit sour about the fact that they couldn't get Sebastian Casa, so they don't want to see him in net because it just brings back bad memories. But if they never had a chance at him, then I guess it doesn't really matter in the end.
That doesn't come into play, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to make a storyline out of something that didn't exist.
I got Elite Prospects up here, and I'm looking at the section at the bottom where it has their last 10 games. So they're obviously getting ready to leave, and they're heading off for the tournament now, or at least for the camp, I mean. And in the last 10 games, Garand has got 3 losses under his belt, and Casa has none. So if you're talking momentum, it might be Casa's momentum might carry him into earning the first start in the preliminary round. But again, it's all going to come down to camp, and they've got their own goalie coaches for Team Canada, and they're going to see what they're looking for and what they like. But I think it's the strength of their forward group is obviously going to score them a ton of goals. And I really think that between the forward group and the goalies, Canada should be fine. I know everyone's worried about that D-core, but if you've got a stud back there and you're going to play run and gun 80 style hockey, well, if you can score 6 or 7, it doesn't matter if you let in 4.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, this whole tournament is so complicated in the fact that we really don't know what type of teams, other countries are playing as well. Like, is Canada going to be able to play that run and gun hockey? Are they going to have, like, there's a lot of WHL players who aren't playing for Team Canada who are going to make a big difference in this tournament. Kevin, you're very familiar with Marco Stasha.
Yeah.
Like, that Czech team is pretty good as of right now.
The Finns always surprise as well.
Yeah.
But what about like, nobody expected the Germans to do what they did last year, especially with their COVID outbreak. They're going to be missing most of their entire top line from last year. But the Germans are another team that, like,
up and comers
came out of nowhere and just astound everybody, even though the fact what they were playing with 10 players one game or something like that. Like, this tournament is so unpredictable that if you want to play that run and gun hockey, go ahead. But if you can't,
someone's going to game plan for it too. They're going to look at this Canada roster and go, well, this is going to be their game plan. Like, all you got to do is try and, run a 1-3-1, clog up that neutral zone. And then what's Canada going to do to adjust? Right. So it's hard to really,
yeah, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's hard to really predict without seeing any other rosters because no other country has came out with their rosters yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can do run and gun against Sweden all you want, but you're going up against Wallstead. Like, if Vikman plays in that tournament, he's stopping 40 shots a game here in Vancouver against run and gun teams.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of match. Like, I know that this tournament, I know that Canada has a pretty stacked roster, but I do kind of worry a little bit about if they can make it all the way, because the U.S. is going to be very good, especially, like, the U.S. is another team that's going to just do shutdown hockey. Matty Beniers is their number 1 center.
The the old cliche, defense wins championships, and I haven't seen any of the rosters for any other countries, but you just look at the Americans roster versus the Canadians. The Americans' defensive core is probably going to be the strongest in the tournament. So if Drew Comesso and that D core can do what they should do, it's going to be really hard to beat those guys.
Yeah.
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 And
yeah.
And my concern, just the other thing with Canada's schedules, they start off, just looking at this here, they open against, they start Monday against the Czech Republic. That's that's a win, but it's not going to be an easy.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. I think
It's not going to be an 11-0 probably.
Yeah.
The Czech Republic is a very good team this year. I think that what's his name? Well, you know him as well. Pavel Novak is just going to light this tournament up.
Yeah,
I just have
yeah.
a feeling that it's going to be the Pavel Novak show. You know, last year he had 3 points in 5 games. So far this year in Kelowna, he's had 24 points in 19 games. Like, I feel like this Czech Republic team is just going to be good. You know, they have Stanislav Svilov. Is that how you pronounce his name? I believe.
I just want to let you go and try and say all the players from this team.
Yeah.
Just
You got Michael Gutt out of Everett, who's expected to be on this team. Like, the Czech Republic could be very good. I don't know who their goaltender is yet.
Yeah.
But just based off of the WHL talent that they have, like, how many times does a country, not Canada or US, have 3 WHL players who are going to be on their roster? It's not very often.
I'm not gonna I agree that the Czechs will be a tough team, and I also agree with you. Pavel Novak is just electric to watch, but I think that that's a game that Canada should win. Like I mean, historically, looking at the roster, that's a win for Canada. Yeah,
okay, but last year Canada should have won the gold, and they didn't. So they got too cocky.
I agree though that go ahead.
I'm going somewhere there. Last year, there was a big loss. And then you got Austria, which is a win. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
Germany, although better, a win.
Yeah.
And then you've got Finland on Friday at the New Year's Eve game. My concern is sort of like the U18s. And one of the things that I know that they set this up with it's set up by previous last year's roster, but the Canada hasn't had a tougher. I wish that Canada has had that battle. Like, I wish that there was a Russia or a US or a Sweden in their pool to push them a little bit more. Like, I think Finland's going to be a tough test. Don't get me wrong, but like, you're right, Adam. Czechs could give him a run, but I don't see Canada losing that game.
Yeah.
Okay,
you
but
also got to
like,
figure.
I didn't see, a couple years ago when the tournament was in Vancouver, I was at that Canada-Finland game. I didn't see Canada losing in overtime to Finland. Like, this tournament, the problem with Canada last year is they got a little bit too cocky against the US, and they got shut out in the gold medal game. So it will be like they have to. There are these trap games, and we talk about trap games all the time in every single league, where there are these games like the Czech Republic, like Germany, where Canada might put their foot off the gas, and the next thing you know, it's 2-1 in the final minute of the third period, and they're down.
I'll make a proclamation here. I'll throw a gentleman's bet down. I don't think Canada will get shut out in any game in this tournament, just with that forward firepower.
No, I agree.
Yeah, but we thought that last year.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It's a prediction. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, let's also be real here. The loss of Kirby Doc was a huge loss. That was massive.
And they weren't as deep last year as they are this year.
They weren't.
Yeah. So, yeah, anything can happen. Like you said, the Finns can always surprise. But, I agree that it might have been better for them to have a tougher challenge before the medal round.
Well, you guys remember the Czech Republic game last year, right? In the quarterfinals? Canada only won 3-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
I just
feel like...
I think that the depth of this team is a lot different than last year. It's an entirely different situation, I think.
We also don't know what Team Russia is going to look like because, who knows what the Russians
They can't have Michkov, can they?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
can
I think he would be in Bedard, so he would be eligible to play. It would be a question if you want him to play.
Oh, I don't think there's any way Russia doesn't put him on that team.
I would agree. I think it's a very different situation.
But we also don't know like any of the Russian players really.
No, for sure. But I just think he's so highly regarded to them. I mean, that's why they locked him in for 5 years as like a 14-year-old or whatever, or 15-year-old. They don't want him going anywhere because they know he's their superstar.
Yeah, he's signing one of those like soccer contracts where the kids sign when they're like 8 years old.
Yeah. He's their next Ovechkin. Let's be real.
Yeah, he is super talented.
Yeah,
for sure. In terms of this, is there anything we sort of missed in terms of what we need to dig into in terms of this lineup, or?
Well, I'm kind of just interested on like what type of game plan they're going to do, because obviously it is the majority of the coaching staff is the same as it was in last year's tournament. But the big difference is that, Andre Tourigny, who was expected to be the head coach this year again, is now the Arizona Coyotes head coach. Yeah. So, how is this coaching
Dave
staff
Cameron
apply the players differently this year?
Yeah. Yeah, it's and they've got someone from each league realistically. So head coach Dave Cameron from the OHL, assistant coach Michael Dick from the Dub, and then Louis Robitaille and one of the assistants from the Q, and then obviously another assistant from Everett. So I mean, they've got, and you can say what you want, but it's a cliche for a reason. I feel like the three different leagues, they do play different styles. Like I feel like the WHL is a little bit more harder nosed, a little bit more heavy play. And Q is kind of more skill-based for the most part. And then the O is kind of a hybrid between the two. And that's why it's just my thinking. So if you've got one of each, you can take advantage of the different play styles and work with the guys that especially Michael Dick should have a good ability to work with 15 WHLers. I'm really interested to see, like Adam said, just game plan. Like, how are you going to play when your D-core is one of your weaker portions of your team, except when your top pairings out there, when you've got Owen Power, who's the best defenseman in the country, in North America, to not be playing in the NHL. So when he's out there, you can be a powerhouse. When he's going off on a line change, now do you alter literally based off of which D pairing is out there? Because I mean, you kind of have to, but it's going to be interesting to see the matchups and how they adjust in game to different opponents, because they are a little one-dimensional.
Now, I have a question for you guys. Speaking of the coaching and everything, do you think Andre Tourigny regrets his decision to go coach the Arizona Coyotes?
Probably.
Like, I'm sure the money is great, but it's like,
you can go golfing year round. I mean,
yeah, you could have, stayed in junior one more year, and then maybe had a couple more choices at the end of the season.
I don't think anyone regrets being an NHL head coach.
I don't either, even if it's Arizona. Like
I'm sure John Tortorella regrets coming to Vancouver, but he
that's different.
Yeah, but yeah, like it's an interesting debate. Like, did Andre Tourigny make the right decision? And in the end, is his coaching style better for this team than maybe Dave Cameron's? Like, if they don't win the gold medal, that's going to be a talking point. Like,
it depends. It depends on how they lose. If they lose because they didn't adjust to other teams strategizing against them, then that will be more head coach based. If they are losing because they're getting outscored, well, then it's going to be, okay, well, this D-core was way too weak. You should have brought in Brant Clark. You should have brought in whatever. And then potentially some spotlight on the goalies. It depends on how they lose, if they lose. But if the matchups aren't being optimized, then head coach could definitely come into the mix for that conversation.
But player selection, it does, yes, they do have a management group, but the head coach helps decide the team.
Yep.
In the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's too early to make a prediction if Canada will get the gold or not. I mean, I suspect that one of the plans is they're going to play the hell out of Caden Gooley and Owen Power. Like the way that they've said it, like this is a 35-minute game for both of them. Like
Thomas Chabot style.
Playing over what was it? He played over 30 minutes one game at the World Championship.
Yeah,
I believe. So or close
But
to that.
in this tournament, though, when you're playing so many games in such a short window, like, can you do that for 8-9 games in 2
he
weeks?
showed he could at
Like,
the World Championship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
so
sure.
like I don't think Owen, Power, and Kane Gooley are going to be the issue. I think it's more like that third pairing.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're only playing in 5-10 minutes of a game, it's not great for your morale and it's not great for your overall play because you're sitting for long periods of time. You know, we see it all the time in the NHL, like these players that play like 6-7 minutes in a game and then their stat line is awful because you
lose focus.
Yeah, and you actually get more tired sitting on the bench than you do probably playing because you have all that adrenaline and then it starts to wear off because you're not physically moving, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a Canuck player who a couple years ago against Calgary who like got dressed and didn't play a single minute of the game?
Oh, more than likely. Yeah.
I remember that. I don't remember who it was, but like he dressed for the game and didn't play a single shift and coach just sat him on the bench.
Probably Goldobin.
It was I want to say it was either Goldobin or a Yolevi. That seems.
It was a forward, but I don't. I just remember that story.
I think it was Goldie. I think someone was like, "What the hell was the point of making him put on gear to sit there for 60 minutes?" Like, it's almost like it's a healthy scratch, but even more insulting. Like, we'd rather play with 11 forwards, and just to prove a point. Yeah.
What year was it?
I don't know. I just remember this story about like a player getting called up or something and not playing the whole game.
It might have been he might have got one shift in the first period, and then it was like, cool, you're sitting
it was like literally 0 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, that I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was.
It sounds like a Goldie move, though.
I'll have to look that up. Anyway, let's leave it there for now. We'll dig in as soon as we get the team. We'll do a podcast discussing that. But what do you guys have going on the Third Line Pod? What do you got going on now?
We got a new episode dropping probably in the next few days here, and we break down exactly sort of what we just did, but we also get into what the teams are up to. The Royals are the cardiac kids of the WHL right now. They keep pulling out overtime wins, and we all break down what's going on for our teams. It was our first episode having all four of us on, probably in what, Adam, like
a long time,
at least 4 or 5 episodes, probably. So we had a little fun. We got a little chaotic, which we're known to do.
But,
what? Yeah. Surprise, surprise. We kind of jump all over the map. I think we all have ADD. I'm just going to throw that out there. But yeah, we have fun. So yeah, we're doing that. And then obviously we are branching out on the Area 51 Sports Network. We are covering WHL now for them. So we're going to have some articles, and I believe we've got every BC division team and every US division team covered. So for anybody that's a junior hockey fan in this market, check them out. Area 51 Sportsnet on Twitter and Instagram, I believe. And yeah, get your fix of junior hockey.
Yeah, I've joined that team, so I will be covering the Kamloops it's so easy to say the Kamloops Blazers, but the reality, it's the Kelowna Rockets. I'm covering the Blazers and the Rockets for the dub, and then the Rockets for Area 51.
There you go. So you got Novak. That's your boy now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Doc, Novak. It's fun to watch Kamloops and Kelowna.
I'm surprised he didn't bring up Cole and Doc. Why he didn't make the team?
I did bring him up, but I think that there's a realistic reason why he doesn't make that team. I don't think that's that big of a travesty. Looking at this lineup, I would imagine that if you're going to play Colton Dock, you play him in a top 6. And does he make the top 6 on this team? I like him a lot, but I don't see him. It's tough to put him on a forward line on this team.
To me, he kind of seems like just another version of Mason McTavish, but probably maybe a little less skilled.
Yeah.
I am not the biggest fan of Colton Dock. I've watched him play multiple times now, in the WHL. I don't think he gets drafted as high as he did if his last name wasn't Doc and the Chicago Blackhawks weren't up to pick. But
well, they're on a brother train right now with the Joneses and the Docs and
yeah. I think that Chicago could have probably gotten him later in the draft.
See? And Kevin, this is what happens. We start going on side routes and branching off, and next thing you know, it's like we were kind of trying to, wrap it all up, and now we're on a whole other tangent. So
No, I mean, I think your point is fair. I like that line of Docs, Durtic, I butcher his name, and Novak, has been the line for the Rockets offensively. I mean, remember that trade with Trevor Wong?
Which I was pissed off about because I think that they got the worst player in that deal, and I think that Trevor Wong should have been drafted. I've gone on many rants about this.
Yes, that's very fair. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, the NHL just hates short players. That's it.
They're shortists.
Yeah, it's a discrimination against short players.
Yeah. But yeah, anywho, that's sort of a microscope into our world, that whole tangent right there. So anybody that's listening, if you're listening to this pod and you want, someone that's jumping from topic to topic to topic and not actually talking about anything, come check us out.
So Liam Neeson, right?
Yeah.
Liam Neeson and Keanu Reeves. Yeah.
Yeah. Liam Neeson versus Keanu Reeves. You can follow at us on Twitter. Beardy, Sean is Beardy Connects 03, Schneid's SCHNEIDZ, Tyler TNOBLE, Devin Gordhouse 09. I am KVOLE, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. Like, share, and subscribe. Reminder, we have tickets to the Vancouver Canucks and Calgary Flames. The word of the week is change, because, demanding change in Canuck land. So message, retweet our stuff for that. And as well as we're back tomorrow, we're going to be arguing about jerseys on the ice, as well as Alex Edler's return to Vancouver for the first time, and much, much more. So keep an eye out for that, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.